What is going on, everybody? We're here at Top Shelf Fandom. My name is Justin Thomas, your host, of course, and I am joined by Jason Shankel of the NatterCast, and we are going to be talking about the finale of True Detective, the season 3 as a whole, to a point. But I am really happy. I reached out to Jason, and he has a bunch of great Facebook groups and a really great podcast. So I'm so happy that you joined me early there on the West Coast.
Nothing like getting up early to talk about True Detective. Yeah.
Exactly.
Life of a podcaster.
Yeah, so if you want to let everybody know kind of your background, where they can find
podcast, we're called the NatterCast. It was sort of based on Spiro Agnew's nattering nabobs of negativism that he called people who were the Vietnam protesters. So we natter. We're the nattering nabobs. And we've been covering shows for several years. We do Game of Thrones, Better Call Saul, of course, True Detective. We did this year. And we also, right now, we're sort of pivoting toward Netflix. And we spend most of our time online on Facebook. So if you guys want to come to I Can't Stop Watching True Detective, definitely for everybody interested in True Detective. And I Can't Stop Watching Netflix, where we're going. We try every month or so to do sort of a wrap-up podcast of a couple of shows on Netflix and movies. We did Bird Box. We did Innocent Man. Anybody who's really interested in True Detective should check out Innocent Man on Netflix. It's the True Detective. And so come join us on Netflix. Search for NatterCast, N-A-T-T-E-R cast, and you'll find our main group. And then search for I Can't Stop Watching, and you'll see a bunch of groups for True Detective and Game of Thrones and Better Call Saul and all the great shows that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. And find all those other people who've got the same sickness as we do.
Yeah. Well, definitely our True Detective group is our most popular. That's the one where we got like thousands of people joined in this season, and lots of interesting and creative and exciting theories, and then of course the usual the Pizzolatto. It's simpler than it seems conclusion, and a lively conversation. I really enjoy especially our detective group. It's the most lively we've had in a long time.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the great thing about this series, and I guess we'll kind of start there with the curbing of expectations.
Yes.
And let me give context for how I'm coming at this, since I watched it once. I watched it after doing a 3-hour pre-show live stream after a pretty long day, an exhausting day of talking about it, and then I didn't do a rewatch like I would usually do because I was a little bit exhausted. And at first thought, I was not thrilled. I wasn't thrilled. And I really didn't know why. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't thrilled. And there is this just feeling of, okay, I definitely knew it was coming because I've been very vocal about the whole concept of you need to just hedge your expectations, because what this does is it goes around and it gives us a bunch of different perspectives, and in the end what you're going to end up with is a commentary on the human condition in society and whatnot. So we do have the most I'd like to know your opinion, but out of the 3 seasons, direct approach to that in the final episode of addressing exactly what I just said. Not like I was the only one, but we all kind of know the work, and we have a decent idea of that it's going to come out to be a little bit more simple, a little bit of Occam's razor at the end there. But it's like, for some reason, I still felt empty. I'll get into that, and I haven't done a rewatch like I'd usually do, not only because of my workload, but because I think it is fair to say that the medium does really dictate that this show sticks the landing without us going back and finding a reason to like something in it. Yeah. And again, I still love the season, and I'm going to do a rewatch, and I'll probably do like a in-depth take on it. But, like, what was your original feeling after that?
My original, I kind of like, so same sort of thing. I was in our group, and I was noticing a real bifurcation of opinion, where some people, loved it and thought, oh my God, it really landed the relationships, especially the marriage and the bromance, just seemed so genuine and good. And they were just said, some people were of the camp of saying, "There's no other way to end this. This is how you do it with these characters." And other people saying that was so disappointing. I was expecting there's no real connection to season 1. What does this have to do with the spiral and the sprawl and all of that stuff? And I wanted an answer. And I wanted at least Hoyt to be a reasonable big bad, somebody who really put them to a lot of challenge. And I kind of coming into this episode and the way we talked about it in our cast, last week was we saw that there's only an hour left, or hour 15 minutes or whatever left in the story. There's no way to build up and develop and pay off a bunch of vast conspiracies in that period of time. And they've taken so much time to get even up to Hoyt that it's like, this is going to be quick. This is going to be, and I even said, I'll bet you Julie's alive and happy somewhere, and that's the resolution, is that we're protecting her identity. Because that would be the light winning, right? And I remember from the first season, people kind of felt the same way about like, well, maybe Russ should have died, and does he need to become an optimist now, or somebody who believes in the spiritual realm if he's been in this intense, cynical atheist this whole time or whatever? But I kind of like looking at season 3 being kind of the Force Awakens, kind of a reboot of season 1 in ways, and back to form. Part of going back to that form is, we're going to end in a relatively happy place with our detectives. And so coming in with that expectation, I don't think I was disappointed. I felt like, this is kind of what I expected. I was disappointed in some execution of the plot of the rest of the story, of the Julie story. I thought Mr. June was a little bit kind of tropey and quick, and sort of this Agatha Christie, let me just describe the whole plot to you, in this dump.
Yeah,
format.
I call them exposition monsters.
Yeah, it's like an exposition cyclops, right? He's the exposition cyclops. And I sort of felt like that wasn't thrilling. I was like, okay, I felt like as they were revealing the story, it was a bunch of like, I kind of figured this out. Yeah, okay, it looks like Lucy was kind of involved. That's not surprising. Okay, maybe Hoyt's not her biological dad. Okay, that was something I was kind of betting on, but maybe not. And it all sort of felt like, like I had a reasonable set of bets, and I got about 8 out of 10 of them, and the other 2 were not so surprising that they ruined it. But It wasn't. I wasn't all excited to find out what happened to Julie. I was all excited to find out what happens with Roland and Wayne and Amelia.
I think that's a good point. And I've kind of pinpointed this without going back and doing a rewatch, exactly what you said about the way in which we found out about this. It is really what most likely resulted in my dissatisfaction with the episode, because even though Pizzolatto we're all currently aware of what he's doing, just like he is leading us astray in kind of, leading you down roads that don't go anywhere for the case, meaning like, like all the red herrings and all the distractions. Right. Those are all supposed to be for a point, and they did end up serving that purpose. The point being showing how people act in these situations. It's showing how people are trying to I put out a tweet right before this, because Now and Found obviously is from Amazing Grace. I put this out before the finale, and I think a lot of people just take that as found, like meaning Julie is found, and yes, but also that's a great commentary, and we won't get too much into it, Amazing Grace, so just on personal versus societal salvation.
Right.
And that's also relevant in the aspect of, and this gets a little shady and jaded, but of the different take on that story. The narrative that song gives on the actual story behind it is a little bit deceiving, but it's kind of like for the better, the greater good. It's like what is social responsibility versus personal. Like, so I was considering all that. I'm like, I bet that's, because this is about Hayes, specifically in Wes, but finding their salvation, like finding purpose in their lives and the different ways they go about it.
Some redemption.
Yes.
Yeah. And obviously Amazing Grace is a redemptive song, and it's like you say, it's a personal salvation song, right? And so I think I guess that is a good way to put it up. The personal level True Detective, I thought the finale was really, really good. I enjoyed everything that was resolving personally. I thought Amelia and Wayne's, the way they work out their marriage, I thought that was some amazing couple work,
See,
and I thought the social stuff was, I didn't care. I didn't care how the bigger picture of the crime and the dissolution of this town and everything like that worked out. It's like, whatever, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to, to showcase the societal change. Like I guess,
Right.
like, I guess you could do a montage, a time lapse, and they're like, I don't get it. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of hard to
But
pick. But
you talked a little bit about the clues, though, and the things like that. My wife, I podcast with my wife, and she brought up a good point on last night's cast, which is that I think it's a lot of protests too much. When he gets onto Instagram and says, no, it's not this, and let me just clarify that, and he's like, clarifying things and shooting down theories. And then he did this in season 1 as well. He got, especially, it was a little bit worse in season 1. Toward episode 6 or so, he started giving interviews where it's like, look, you people are going far too far down this Yellow King. It's not going to be about that. This is a straightforward story. I just use this for window dressing. But I think it's a little bit disingenuous to put so much window dressing, so much satanic panic, so much Lang, so much Carcosa, so much Yellow King, so much D&D. So much like Amelia being a femme fatale and everything like that into the story, and then getting frustrated with us for following up those leads.
And that's what I was getting at. There's nothing wrong with what he does, but here's the thing. You, just the way that you capitalize on that misdirection, you cannot go ahead and, yes, I know it's Occam's razor version of the end, but here's the thing: the way in which you deliver that simple ending needs to be at least on par. Maybe you're not going to ever reach the same complexity which you give it, but you can't, because it ends up being very simple. But I think the big problem was the just sitting down at a table and saying, this is what happened. Yeah, it's that simple. So it's like, you can't give that simple explanation for the simple.
I would compare it to, I don't want to do spoilers for these because they're great movies, but like David Mamet's movies in the 80s and 90s, he did Homicide and House of Games and a few others, and they have this theme as well, which is that the plot seems to be very complicated and pointing in one direction while you're watching the movie. And the themes in those films are conning people and anti-Semitism in police investigation. And then there's a resolution that's a gut punch twist that shows you how much simpler and more basic and more banal explanations are for things that you've been seeing. But in those stories, he's not faulting you for going down the rabbit hole because he's setting that stuff up on purpose. He knows it. He's like, I'm going to lure you into thinking that you're watching one kind of mystery, one kind of film noir, one kind of romance. And then I'm going to turn it at the end. And it's going to matter to you to go back and see, oh no, these characters were really behaving under a completely different context with a totally different set of motives that's really much more simple, much more banal, much more understandable, much more ordinary than it seemed like while I was watching the movie. And that's satisfying. And I kind of wish that Nick would lean that way, because I think he's saying something important about especially in the era of true crime podcasting, which is just like taken over, and we're all into Serial and all this stuff, which I think is fun and good. But I think the character of Elisa in this season represented this idea of, you can go too far down these rabbit holes and it takes you away from the answers that you're looking for. And Marty even said that, like at the very beginning of the first season, the detective's curse is that you're looking at something so closely that you can't see it. Right?
Yeah,
I wish he would not. It always seems like he gets to the point where he's making that point, but he's making it kind of like rolling his eyes and grudging.
You can't bite the hand that feeds you.
Right. It's like he got tricked by his stuff. And it's like, no, we're supposed to be tricked, Nick. You're supposed to make us realize something about ourselves when we see how simple it is.
And that's a good point. And I have the same issue with Westworld when they came out with that their little video, and they rickrolled people after, and I kind of took it as like, a little bit of a slight. And it's like, listen, you are capitalizing off of this chatter because this is why this show is so popular. And also the whole commentary, like the meta of it is, also, it's not necessarily bad that we're all looking for these, because what it is, we're all trying to find a monster, right?
Right.
And a lot of people, and you can take this a few different ways, but my take on it is the reason that we're trying to find monsters, consciously or subconsciously, is because, we want to slay the monster, like we want to just get rid of all the bad. And of course, because we just don't want this to happen, it would be great if it was a sex ring, not because it's great that there's a sex ring, but because if you shut that down, you feel like, and this is
power.
Yeah. And this is not logical, people, but we're not logical beings.
Right.
Okay. So again, I'm not saying that this is like how I feel like this would really go down. Like, oh, it'd be so great if there was a sex ring, because then we could just stop all of like pedophilia and all this nasty stuff that unfortunately happens. But that, of course, is where we go in our heads. We're like, we just need to find who's doing this. We just need to find them. And not only can we not find the single source of this, but that source is never the monster that we want them to be either. So it's the commentary on, just where we naturally go. So like going down those rabbit holes and doing all that is where people naturally go. It's and there is that thin line between the pseudo intellectual of Reddit and the person that's just watching the show to have fun, that the Redditor is, going to say, oh, you don't get it, and this was done this way, and or the other way, that they're not happy with it because it didn't indulge their theories. Like, you have to set your expectations. It's fun to go down those rabbit holes, like you said, and there's nothing wrong with it. That's what you're supposed to enjoy. So he shouldn't try to shut that down. Also, him being on Instagram like he did this season so much in curbing expectations, and he just says that in an interview he gave yesterday. He kind of did that. Well, his reasoning again for why he did it is to curb expectations, but it's like that doesn't really say great things about the way you're telling the story if you feel
if you feel you need to curb expectations. And I feel like he definitely got a little bit more burned on this in season one. Season one definitely had a much wider set of bizarre speculations and had about as simple an ending as this in terms of the story wrap up. And it doesn't say a lot about how well you're delivering, because I think what he's not admitting is that this is a twist ending. Yeah. But to have things be simple and basic in a story like this, when you've been giving us a series of thematic, mysteries, it's a twist. So treat it like one. Treat it like the audience wants to be delighted and surprised by finding out that things aren't exactly what they thought.
Yeah,
as opposed to disappointed or just like, why? And I kind of felt that way with Hoyt. It's like I didn't require a whole lot out of the story unfolding, but I thought Hoyt would be much more of you're casting Michael Rooker, and you use just his voice at the end of episode 7, and you know how menacing he is, right? And you know how good he is at playing racist characters, and you know he's an African hunter, right? And you know he's picking up Marshall Ali and has the upper hand. You set up that much drama, right? Like I said on our cast, I was expecting when they were getting out of that limousine that Hoyt was going to pull out a rifle and say, "You have 5 minutes, and I'm going to come after you like Most Dangerous Game style. I'm going to hunt you through the woods." And then we'd have to have Purple Haze, using his skills to survive in the woods against a crazy drunk old white guy who wants to hunt him down. That's the level of buildup that they had to that. And then we end up with, do I look like a guy who has answers? Don't piss me off. And that's the whole conversation.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's not a twist. That just feels like, oh, okay. Well, there was not much point to this.
It's not adhering. The way in which we receive this information is not adhering to the narrative style that the other 7 episodes did. And you're right, like he is setting up, it's almost like live by the sword, die by the sword, because even people like me that have been so vocal about how this is going to be so simple. And just like you said, like we both I don't know exactly all of your predictions for it, but like we were pretty much all within 2. Like I didn't expect the drug aspect. I will talk about this briefly. I didn't really like the drug aspect, not that it's not relevant, but because it kind of takes the actions out of her hand,
takes her agency away, and it also, we want to get into the thing too. I think that the story here was a little bit too simple, and I think the same thing was true with Childress. he treats it like it's a relatively small thing. It would be no small thing to be held and lithiumed for your entire sexual development.
Yeah.
From age 10 until age 20, right? You are in a basement being held by crazy people and being drugged, and then you just run off and meet your junior high school boyfriend and marry and have a kid, and you're well adjusted. That feels unlikely.
Yeah, you curb the chemical.
You'd be a little dissociated for a while, maybe not remember who you are, and then you sort of just revive, and you're going to be fine. She would be very messed up.
Yes,
she would be her entire adult development happened down in that basement.
Yeah, your formative years are literally what forms you.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So it's surprising that she's even normal height, let alone
sadly
well adjusted. And so those are answers it's like at that point, it's like if it's that lurid of an explanation of what happened here, I need to know a little bit more of this story from Julie's point of view, because when you work out Julie's point of view, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yes, and that's what I mean. I don't mean about the out of the hands for Isabel, because she chose to listen. In my personal life, I know in people and have dealt like addiction and all that. I'm not taking it. I'm not going to speak for it. We're not taking it lightly, But here's the thing: when you have what I mean about out of your hands, not the responsibility, of course, but with Julie being drugged, that is what they use for the explanation of that massive deception with the phone call, when she calls. That's how they explain that away. That's not great. That's not a great narrative. That's not a great decision in the writer's room right there, because you're not giving us proper justification for the deception, and that's where you walk into season 2 Westworld issues. I hate to connect it so much, but when you're deceiving, and it's not near on that level, but Westworld season 2 deceives you the whole time for deception's sake. That they're withholding information from you to just withhold it, just
to make it mysterious.
This culture in which it sickens me to a point of I don't mind the whole. I don't mind theories, because I do them too. And that's the point, because it serves the overall purpose, because we have to cycle through all of these thoughts in our head and consider all these different perspectives, because when you look at things from somebody else's perspective, you are going walk in their shoes. That's why they say that. Take a walk in their shoes. You're taking a walk in their shoes. You're gaining an understanding. It actually has a positive result, but it also needs to be thematically.
I think you make a great comparison to Westworld there, actually. Because I found, I don't know how you felt about it, but I found, we also have I Can't Stop Watching Westworld, by the way, we're going to jump in. I felt like season 1 was very satisfying in the reveals and the twists. It was another one of these cases where it's like, I had about 80% of it by the time they got to the end of season 1. The other 20% was, felt like it fit and it was fun and everything like that. What I found was with season 1 is that knowing all of the twists and going back and watching it a second time, it was more satisfying.
Yes.
Right. It was like, okay, now I know about I'm not going to reveal everything, but now I know how these twists are going to go, and this is actually a good little piece of character study. I didn't feel that way with season 2. With season 2, I felt like you were annoyingly, with the same issue, by the way, with memory loss, right? So you're annoyingly giving me an amnesiac character.
Yes.
Just so you don't have to reveal the story to me. And then and I felt that way with this season 3. It's like people were wondering, like, how did Amelia die? This was the most important thing. They thought it might have been a car crash, or she was killed by Hoyt, or some other thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh no, she just died young of something. Why did she die? She died because we need Wayne to be alone in 2015.
Yes, yeah. Why?
In order for the
I wrote it in the script. That's why.
Yeah, it's because I need him to be alone. That's the same reason he and Roland, their friendship wanes for a quarter of a century. It's so that no one knows Wayne very closely except for maybe Henry.
Yes. So,
right. Yeah. And that's just to tell that story. So it's like, oh, so these details aren't important. They just got you to the place where Wayne could be all by himself.
Absolutely. Yeah. What I was getting at with the Reddit is that there's the one half, like, I agree, I don't mind with the theories, but there's the other half of the demographic that wants it to be different. Everything, they don't matter if it's good. It just needs to be shocking, right? They just want the story everybody has this weird obsession with wanting everything they watch to mean bullshit, to mean nothing. They're like, I want everything to not be the way it is. So all the character development means nothing. There's the big problem with Westworld is that whole thing. I want, what if Ford was, still controlling them all? I'm like, oh yeah, what a great story about the old white man that's still controlling all of the people,
Right.
Like that's very odd take in, people are yearning for this in this society where it's all about, empowerment and all this. And a show that's supposed to be about empowerment is not usually going to utilize a white messiah character in that way. But, it's just craziness to me that there's the other half. They don't give a shit. And that's why theory videos are annoy me so much when it gets to the point of, people are just loving a theory because this person's proposing that it's all going to be so different. You guys, are going to be so shocked. I'm like, yeah, because that story now is so stupid. And it wasted your time all for a magic trick. If I want that, I'll go to the carnival. But
exactly.
Here's the thing with Pizzolatto, I don't think it was bad. I thought that it was really beautiful to tie up things like the whole idea of tell a story about what happens to the girls here. And that's a great little injection of don't just tell a story about this case, tell a story about what happens to girls here. And that is the story that they end up telling. And it's not necessarily the case of what happened, but it serves, again, the greater good to do this. And that's what happens with Julie. And that's kind of the decision. And it's kind of taken out of Hayes' hand at the end. He finds out if he, and he gets there and then he has his fugue state or whatever. And that's whatever, I'm not going to nitpick that, but and there is a cut scene in which Henry does for sure know what's going on. I guess that he's going to release.
I kind of got that read on Henry's face that he understands the importance of that.
Yeah. But the thing is, when you have these, when you're putting the bookends on these relationships, it was beautifully done with Hayes and it was beautifully done with Wes. But here's the thing. I never gave a crap about Amelia and Hayes' relationship because it was, and they do talk about this and about how it was all about the case. Like I mentioned this in the pre-show before the finale. I asked the panel, I go, do you guys think they'd even be together if it wasn't for the case? But it got to the point where it was almost not bearable for me to watch some of the scenes with them because they were going at each other. And this is just my opinion. And we do find out why that was because, that's the reason why
that's actually the part that I kind of agreed with you about. Like I was getting a little tired of it. It's like, why do two people like each other? What's your marriage about if you really disrespect each other at this level? And I think I did like seeing that basically, in 1980, because we get this reflection here. We get 1980, they commit to each other in the context of this case, and they spend the next 10 years raising children, and Wayne becomes this, in the 1990s, he's a bit of an asshole, right? He's pretty bitter, and we don't really see why too much. And in this episode, we see it's because he sacrificed his career for hers, right? And that creates much more resentment than just, I made some mistakes and you had some luck and I'm just, it's contingent. It's like, no, I actually sacrificed being a detective so you could be a writer.
But did he though? Because the reason he gives her the go ahead on that is not because, Hayes does not support, in my opinion, her in that venture. He only does that, right, when he just has hit rock bottom. He goes, yeah, somebody's got to do it. I guess go ahead with your shitty book. Because I guess there's maybe some semblance of a chance, that.
Well, there's that, and he declines to throw her under the bus too, right? It's like he could have signed the thing, and she would have been like, "You have to do what you have to do. I didn't mean to jam you up." And
there is the redemption,
and also just the level to which Roland obviously really liked Wayne and wanted to keep working with him. So Roland we know he makes it up to lieutenant and everything like that, would have been able to bring Wayne along. It's like he could have been working cases for 10 years, but he worked public relations, right? And so to find out that he made that choice and then to come to 1990 and he basically says what you just said, our entire relationship is predicated on this case and it's not part of either of our lives. It's not something you don't want to write another book about this. I don't want to keep investigating this. Let's go. I'll become a security guard and you can continue to teach, and you write the book you want to write, and I'll do the kind of work I want to do. I liked that. I liked coming to it's like that feels like a good relationship.
Yeah.
Story. I agree with you that especially throughout the season, it was starting to get a little bit like, oh, hey, they're going to fight and then they're going to have sex. Okay, here we go again.
Right. Yeah, so they give us, like you just said, all of that great stuff about, how it was a good relationship. And even more so than good, I just want to clarify this for people. I mean good in the sense of it's something that we saw like some passion in other than about this case. Like we see, but we don't get that until the last episode. We don't get that right before they, give us the resolution. So it's like they only tell us something is worth saving before they save it.
Right.
And that's not great as far as, the narrative.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. It's like we waited for far too long to because I figured they got divorced.
Yeah.
Right. So the most of our theory through the because the way Wayne was rolling, her too, but he was especially angry in 1990 throughout most of the season. And it's like, well, I'm assuming that this comes to a head and they break up, and I assume he's alien, and that maybe Becca chose her mom, and that's why she's alienated from her dad, because it really seemed like Becca was the sore spot, but she's not. And it's like I don't feel like it's I was an idiot for thinking that the Hayes family ended up in a bad place in 1990s when that's the whole clue train that you're setting up.
Yeah.
Is leading in that direction. Oh, it's like, oh no, turns out Becca loves her dad, and Wayne and Amelia, stay together and they get clear of this thing and everything's great for, another 20 years or so. And then she passes away right as he's developing dementia. Okay. I don't feel like I should have just seen that was coming.
No.
Right. Or yeah.
And I think it's important to take into consideration that, like, of course, like there's like realities of life, like, with Becca, leaving from what I'm taking kind of because he couldn't deal with her dad's hurts her. And that's something that, that is really something people should. Yes, I like the showcasing of that because it's like, oh, how dare they be mad at him or the son get frustrated with him? Like, it's like, listen, good people that, you can be the best person in the world. That's still the fact of life is going to anger you, even though it's out of his control. It's a frustrating thing. It is selfish to leave and all that. But it comes down to giving realistic explanations for why people do things. But where I see this coming out and really, really riding the line is with Lucy, who I never, of course, thought was a great person. And I kind of like obviously knew that she was going to be complicit in this. But here's the thing. It's really drawing the line on my empathy when I have her say, well, you're not just going to take my kid because I'm not stupid. You could take her. You're going to take both of them. So how about that?
And then one of them ends up dead.
Yeah, because like, that's her protection method.
And she knows what happened to the other one. She's being paid. And then through that whole thing, I mean, going back and looking at it, I want to watch the performance. It is Meryl Streep's daughter, right? So obviously Oscar.
Yeah. Oh, why
Oscar
not?
caliber performance would have to. But if you knew that your daughter was in a basement somewhere and that your son had been killed, however accidentally, but in this, and you're being paid off, and you're coming to press conferences and you're picking fights with Tom, and it just felt like, okay,
yeah, I didn't like her the level of stupidity that was shown, and I know it might not be fair. It's just how I feel. I was like, it's like, oh, what do you think? I'm stupid? I'm going to give you my kids so you can just take them? No, you're going to take two. All right.
And why wouldn't she write up the truth in her will? And just, it's like, suppose she's the worst person in the world. I'm going to take money and I'm going to party in Vegas until something happens to me. But I'm going to make sure that on my death, the truth gets revealed.
Yeah.
Right? Just put it in your will. So as soon as they read it, it's like Julie's being held in a pink basement on Wade's property. Go find her.
Like you see, and it was kind of disappointing for me because I saw that she wasn't one-dimensional, because you see like the rational track of her irrational emotion, for lack of a better way of phrasing it. But you see her talking about how she's got the soul of a whore and all this. So she's obviously doesn't have any self-esteem or any self-worth. She feels like she is worthless. And then she's talking about how the children should be happy. So it's like, okay, this is the mindset, unfortunately, of a person that it would do this, that would think I'm
Sure.
giving my daughter for the better good. I am going to give her the life that I can't give her because I'm guarded.
Yeah, she's rationalizing, and it's rationalizing selfish behavior by claiming it's for
Yes.
somebody else.
By saying it's for the better good. But, you know, like, so this kind of throws a jam in that, even though it's still along the lines, it's kind of just after the fact, like, you know, of this silly decision. It happens. So again, it's not a big sticking point for me, but, you know, like when we talk about this, and I see some people, you know, it's very divisive right now with everybody talking about whether they hate it or not. You know, I came off not too negative. I did say I was not happy with it. But I'm kind of trying to boil it down to why I felt like I wasn't fulfilled, even though it was really on all points what I was expecting and what I feel it should be, because it's delivering the proper messages. And it does come down to a lot for me, because I feel like this whole resolution of Amelia and Hayes is not something that I felt was like, I didn't feel like they're salvaging something beautiful, you know, because again, it was just thrown on me at the end. And you're dealing with a situation in which you have his decision again to like leave it's better to leave it alone, because it's not selfish for him to do that. Like, he isn't going to try to find meaning in this case anymore, right? Because that's been his problem, is that ever since he got back from Vietnam, I'm under the understanding this was the first case as a detective that he technically got.
He had been a detective for 12 years.
Yeah, so like
this couldn't have been his first case.
People are saying that, and that's what I'm wondering. Like, how is this?
Maybe it was the first big press case or something like that. But unless there were no murders in the area for 12 years or robberies, he would have been investigating crime.
Yeah. Maybe it was. You know, let's be optimistic. Why are we such pessimists? But it comes down to this issue of, you know, his whole mindset about like what is a life worth living and so forth. Like, how do I find meaning? What is my value? And it's all invested in this case. And you see a little bit of you do see a little bit of polar opposites with, you know, Wes, because Wes still wants to solve the case, but like he's approaching this, and I think that's a weird place to be in as a detective, because it's like the idea of clocking out, you know, to some people it's like, how could you? It's like, well, we can't, you know, like, meaning like they're
give our whole lives to this thing.
Yeah, and they're like, but it's a kid. It's like, yes, I know, but in order for this to be a profession that's like able to, you know, sustain any type of success, you can't have people that are just consumed. They're all going to be in the madhouse. You know, it's not the proper way to live.
Yeah, and in fact, again, going back to season 1, Marty essentially says that. Marty spends the first couple of episodes talking a lot about work-life balance, which he has a screwed-up version of.
Yeah.
Right? Where he's like, you have to work hard, you have to play hard, and sometimes married life isn't compatible for that. But then he also says, on the other hand, you know, after a while, a guy without a wife, that's a bad thing, right? And comparing himself to Rust, and you know, Rust is kind of reclusive and crazy. But that's one of the things he's saying. You know, again, detective's curse. You look too closely and too much detail, and you get too overwhelmed, and you don't see the clear, bright picture because you're so distracted by.
Yeah, there's some forest analogy for that, right? Like,
the forest trees analogy, and I think that's an important. I always like to say, you don't. You know, and I think we should say that a show isn't bad because it didn't do what we would do. You know, a show isn't bad because it didn't resolve stories the way I would do it, right? And I'm not saying that because you didn't do my theory, therefore you did it wrong. I always go into this saying, no, I'm trying to understand your theory, Nick, right?
Yeah,
David, or whoever is writing, right? It's like I'm trying to understand what you are trying to say, and especially in this season more so than the other two, they've all had sort of connections to our real world, but here they were very much going in on the 1980s Satanic Panic, D&D Panic. Right, Black Sabbath T-shirts, that kind of thing. They touched on that at the beginning and then pulled way back compared to in the 80s. A case like this, there'd be people saying it was devil worshippers.
Yeah,
it would be a major theme. It would be a major theme of the investigation is which group of devil worshippers did this. Right.
We want to simplify this.
Yeah. So if you and I think part of what he's trying to say with especially with Elisa, the TV producer, is that the true crime trend now has some elements of the Satanic Panic of the 80s. It's a little more fact-based, a little more researchy. We have more internet, and it doesn't feel like we're going as crazy. But this craze of thinking that true crime involves a vast global network of intentional villains probably doesn't hold water, right? I think, and that most cases you're going to find that the reasons for a killing or a kidnapping or a disappearance or a rape or anything like that are much more banal.
Well, we see how those actions come
right,
out.
And then it's
we
very
see Roland and Hayes get into the situation in which he kills somebody. We see our heroes, kill.
Oh, yeah, they committed half the murders on the show.
Yeah, so,
yeah. So whatever.
And again, it's not a bad. I don't think it comes from a bad place like this monster idea. It comes from a place of trying to understand. We make sense of the world through monsters. It's not the best method, but it's not like because we want to hate. It's because we want to stop the bad. But it'd be so much easier if only we had those monsters. If only they weren't us. Is the issue.
I think where he succeeded on this message in the past, and I'd like to see him just re-embrace these kinds of things, was the whole Reggie Ledoux thing. The Reggie Ledoux reveal is one of the great shots in this series. It's one of the great shots on TV, right? When you have, when Rust is saying, at the end of every, just like the end of every nightmare, there's a monster. And we see Reggie in his underwear and his gas mask and his machete walking through the woods. And then in that season, the way the Reggie Ledoux story plays out, which is unexpected, right? And leads us to more theories about why it would happen that way. I think that he got that monster right. I don't think he got Mr. June right as a monster, right? And I don't think he got Hoyt right as a monster, because I felt like they were much more. It's like they left us with more questions than answers. They left us with, it's like, it wasn't as satisfying. It was satisfying to see the way that the Ledoux case worked out.
Yeah, right? We're left with a lot of people that were left with, this man just felt like, or this person felt like they just couldn't do anything more, and they kind of like got steamrolled by this, steamrolled by the situation, essentially, which is, because again, it's like, how many times do you hear people say, I'd do anything for my kids? And it's like, well, this is an example, I guess, of somebody doing anything for their kid. But also, I don't like this plea of ignorance that he has,
Hoyt's?
Yeah, I don't really enjoy
it's
that.
Crazy. How do you not know that there's an excavated basement in your house? He has to literally know what happened.
I take that as denial. It has to just be denial. But it comes down to, like we're talking about, it's the.
And he's alcohol, and it could check out.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like the complexity of the season needs to carry on to the simplistic ending, and you can have a simplistic ending delivered in the same amount of with the same amount of nuance, at least that you've had, and you have to carry that through. You should, there's two ways to look at it. Like I was talking about you like I was talking about you before we went on. Like I was telling you before we go on air, like I'm almost happy that I didn't do a rewatch, because I have to look at these series, because I have to figure a lot of people that are watching or listening, the tens of people, that they are, not people that are going to go and sit like I do, because they're not crazy. And analyze it. The medium of, cable television is that you should be satisfied by watching that single episode, and that's it. And then, also, do we expect that people should have to enjoy this all once they go back and watch the full body of work? It should be, you enjoy it no matter what, but you enjoy it more. You can even get more enjoyment if you go back and do a rewatch of the body of work. That's the medium. That is the way in which it's delivered. That's, when they split books up, like the Fellowship of the Ring and all that, like they chose to put like separate books out, so that you have to have the expectation that, like, you can't say, well, I didn't like the first two books. They're like, well, you haven't read the third one yet. I'm like, well, you separated the third one. So, like, it's not on me, that's on you. Like, you should have gave me.
The thing is, we don't expect True Detective to be a blue sky program. It's not Special Victims Unit. It's not like, whoever the B+ or greater level guest star this week is, that's who did it. That kind of thing. But what you bring up a very good point, and when you listen to the other podcasts and our podcasts on this, is that there is a huge I think we as podcasters, we tend to lose track of the fact that not everyone is digging in on every theory on Reddit. Not everyone is following up every little side clue or little reference to history or, this kind of thing. They're in it for kind of just a progressive story with some cinematic film quality and like that. And so you end up having to serve these two audiences. The one audience that's going to go completely down the rabbit hole, and look at every piece of graffiti on every drive-by shot to try and figure out if there are clues there. And other people who are just going to be like trying to remember who all the main characters are in the finale, and just, I'm happy that Stephen Dorff's character ended up okay, and that's all I really care about.
Yeah, I'm reading an essay written by a professor of theology about Amazing Grace and their interpretation before
right. Not everyone's going to do
the season finale, right? because of 3 words, the title. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and go further down, they ended with St. James Infirmary Blues, which is a great old standard.
God, just don't.
Go down the meaning of that song. That thing is because that's about a disappeared girl.
Yeah, and it's like we do what we do because we enjoy doing it. We do enjoy doing it, but yeah, I always had to like kind of ground it too, because it's like, what is
it's not really for us. The show is not.
We're the market.
Those who go that far, it's like that we are 10% of the audience that they're serving, and the other 90% is never going to get this much of this stuff.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones is so popular because we convinced every aunt and uncle and everybody we've ever met to watch it.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Then that's when they're like, well, I think that this the inclusion of any little semblance of something that only happens in the book. It's like when I'm talking with other creators, I'm like, shut up. Yeah. I sometimes do if how well I know them, but it's like, stop right there.
That's book only.
Does anybody know that just watches the show? They're like, well, no, but you'd have to read the books. I'm like, that's not how they write it. That's not how that writer's room goes.
Right.
It doesn't always go great. Trust me. You know what I mean? I don't agree with everything, but they're definitely not putting in some shit that's not anything these people know. That's not how it works. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you can't expect television to do that. You can't expect essences of the story to seep into it. So it's like, it's this craziness that we have.
Yeah. And we cover Game of Thrones as well. And that was there. It's much more explicit because there you have a very strong division between the source material and the TV show. And now the TV show is ahead of the source material. But for a long time, we had whole things because we had, like I was reading the books for the first time ahead with the show. I was reading the books because of the show. And I have a couple of co-casters who had read the books in the 90s and were fans from the beginning and this kind of thing. There, at least you can make that explicit case and people understand it. It's like, we're going to have book talk and show talk. And if something is referenced in the show that's elaborated on in the book, we can talk about that. Or if something happens in the show that contradicts something in the book, then the show is the show and the book is the book. And I kind of appreciated that opportunity of watching this live authorship and adaptation at the same time, right? It's like he's still writing the books and they're adapting the ones that existed, and then he got ahead of his story. It's an incredibly unique way of adapting an epic that I think kind of lends itself more to jumping down different kinds of rabbit holes and understanding that everyone who's watching it is aware of, that, there's a whole joke videos about like how annoying book readers are. Especially in seasons 3 and 4, it's like, here it comes, or whatever.
Yeah, you run into the pseudo intellectuals on Reddit and on YouTube and on podcasts everywhere, but
like us, we're all in it.
Well, it is what it is. Some people, just I don't know.
We are Elisa. We are all that. I picked that up in episode 7. I'm like, she's completely
audience surrogate.
She's the audience surrogate, or this type of audience. She's the deep dive audience surrogate.
Yeah.
And she's completely wrong about everything. Yeah. Okay, Nick, I get it. Okay, the audience surrogate for my type of viewer, for the viewer I am, is out to lunch in terms of what's connected to what here.
Yeah, but it's does the confusion, does the madness have a reason? Is there a reason for this madness? And with the series as a whole, I would say yes. And I'm looking forward to, when I have time, going and watching season 1 and then watching this season. That's what I plan on doing, and really kind of getting a vibe for who did what, and who did what better. I do think season 1 was better. Season
overall,
3,
yeah.
this finale was just, you can't again just say, that, well, this is actually what it is. Like literally that's what happened. Like, we got, oh no, it's just like this. And it's like, oh man, like you could have started off with the kids on the bikes, you know what I mean? It's like you could have done a whole lot of things, like, and showed us like even from like this, like, just third perspective, whatever it is. I'd rather have anything other than June.
So yeah, but speaking of the positive though, I mean, like I think season 1 is still better in most ways, but I said in our cast that Roland and Wayne are my favorite detectives of all 3 seasons in terms of people I'd like to know in the real world.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. I mean, Russ and Marty are fantastic characters and just really and great performances. I don't know that I'd want to hang out with either of them for too long.
Yeah. Are those real people?
These aren't really real people. I mean, there's a degree. I mean, like Marty's very sleazy and Russ is very cynical. Being in a car with those two would eventually get really grating.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel that Roland and Wayne are just feel like 2 regular guys, and I kind of liked feeling like I was watching more normal characters. Who I care. And I did find it like throughout the season they took every turn. Something we mentioned a couple times. Every time they had an opportunity to make Roland likable, they took it.
Yes, and that's what raises suspicion. Is
why
is this? How is this guy so? This guy's clean. Like he's too clean. It's that whole.
It's like
he has to be gay. He has to be this. He has to be this. Right. And there's and that goes into how we're having a nonlinear story. Because it's not out of. I never got that. I never subscribed to it, but I see how people came to the conclusion, but it's because it's jarring to have him just the timeline skip, and then we see him out of nowhere praying with time because we didn't even know he was talking with him, and then doing all this, so it's jarring because we're not getting it. So, but that's another great meta commentary as well, because it's like, why did we jump to this? And we're not supposed to be shamed, but it's like how quickly we jump to conclusions.
No, I mean, it's sort of for me, it was like and again, Nick was like, oh, you're not really supposed to get that he's gay, but whatever. I saw that and I was like, okay, if he turns out to be gay, it won't have come from nowhere. It won't have been a complete left turn surprise. But it's also not, nothing that we saw established that or anything.
What does that do for the story as well?
What does it do for the story? Why would him being gay be part of the story? Why is Tom being gay? Tom being gay is sort of part of the story because it helps you understand why that marriage didn't really work.
Because his wife was just a beautiful dreamboat.
Right. And what I found with Roland is that it's less about that. It wasn't really interested in whether he was gay or not. It had more to do with he really loves Wayne on at least a romantic friendship level. And he loves Tom on a brotherly level. And he cares about these people and wants them to be better and to succeed. I'm really interested in what happened in 1985 in this story. That's the missing year. Everybody has a 1985 story.
I was born. That's when I was born.
Oh, you're born into it. Well, everybody in this show, it's like, oh, I worked for the Hoyts until 1985, and then you pulled me out of that hole that I was in back in 85. It's like 85 is this year of a lot of drama that happened.
Maybe that's the twist for me. My parents are in this show.
Oh, there you go.
Dad, are you there? What's interesting is that, and I think where we do have a small issue, and we'll wrap it up in a few,
Sure.
is that we have the whole, we're supposed to care again about the, salvaged relationship of, Hayes and Amelia.
Right.
But then they don't even tell us how Amelia died. It's like, she's so important, but we don't even show
what was
that
experience like? It's like, again, and I felt like, you know what? I'm going to throw one of my ones out here. This is where I first began to get a sense that this was going to be a little janky, was with Harris James. I found the Harris James incident to be an example of lazy writing, and I don't normally accuse Nick of this completely, but was completely clear logically that he had to die in that barn.
Yeah.
There was no end game to let's beat up Harris James and get the truth out of him. Suppose he gave you everything. Suppose he gave you, Hoyt and kidnapped and basement and Pink Palace and crazy daughter and Reverend Tuttle and global pedophile conspiracy and Catholic Church and Pizzagate and 15 other things. Suppose he gave it the whole Alex Jones breakdown to you. Lizard people. right?
Those people, please don't joke about lizard people on my show. Those people are people.
But so the point is, suppose he gave you everything. What do you do with it? You already feel like you can't go to your bosses with what you have. You're not going to be able to go to them with something crazy, and you can't let him go.
Also, what do you do with that? We see a similar action in season 1 in episode 5 where they kill the person that has all the information to solve the case.
It's the same thing. The detectives will kill the guy who has all the information.
Which I will say, I'm in line with what you're saying so far. I don't hate on how they do that because it's like, their emotion. That's just showcasing how their emotion and how them, exactly like we were talking about earlier, them being so invested in not clocking out.
I get it. I mean, it kind of fits with the character, but the point is that once they kidnapped him, I knew he was dead.
Yeah.
Because there's no logical place the story can go where he lives. And it felt like, he dies sort of accidentally,
just enough so you can maybe sleep at night.
Just enough so you can see. So it wasn't their intention to kill him. It's like, well, if it wasn't your intention to kill him, what was your intention? You sat there for hours in a car deciding to do this. Also, by the way, out in front of a security section point where you're being filmed.
Sir, I just wanted to beat him to death. Beat him near to death.
I was going to torture him. How did Hoyt know? Does he have this kind of thing and that kind of thing? It's like he has cameras at his factory. He saw your car. Right?
Yeah.
And so that felt like, we just got to get Harris James into this barn so we can have our Reggie Ledoux moment so that the detectives can commit a murder because that's the story.
Because that's
so I'm going to have to do something where there was no logical conclusion except for that outcome. And have them act like they had some other idea in mind. And so I think that's part of the way that he wraps things up too simply, is that he falls into the trap of saying, I know the story has to go to this place, so I'm going to have the characters walk in that direction even though they would not want to go.
You're writing situation, not character.
Right, exactly.
That is a Westworld thing as well, where you have,
Dolores.
Yes, Dolores is out of character. Her goals and desires are not in line with anything she's doing throughout the whole season, and it's just to service this deception, So it's
a Service Bernard's story,
yes,
for some reason that you wouldn't have any investment in.
Yeah, you're doing all these things that are doing a disservice. You're taking a 3-dimensional character in order to service a 1-dimensional plot, and you're throwing her under the bus.
They completely threw Dolores under the bus.
Yeah, it's like I don't know who this person is, and it's like this is supposed to be the development stage of her, and it's just this total. Not in sync with what you then want to jump back to in your finale for their goals and desires. Like that's what makes it even worse is they try to act like it was all for this. It's like, no, because I can name all these events that are not in line with that. You know what I mean? Like you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like if you want to do the stupid twist show, the silly nonsense garbage that isn't really up to par with what you're capable of doing, you pick that. Like I think I make the analogy of, you can have Bill and Ted's Adventure or you can have the piano. I'm not a huge fan of the piano or whatever. I'm just saying they're different. And one won an Oscar. You can't put them together in the same film. You know what I mean? They don't add up. Like you choose Bill or Ted or you do the stupid piano. They're both what they are. Like you can't do both. But it's just I see that as you need conflict, so you incite it. But yeah, I agree. It's like, why are they doing this? One nitpick as well. Did you notice the raw ability to handle himself like a badass, which I enjoyed out of Wes in the finale? But do you notice how poorly? Which I thought was really great how they showed these guys, even though they were badass, like we respect them for what they did. They were not like when they were dealing with Harris, terrible. They did not. Okay, that was not the same guy. His fighting ability, and I was I was an amateur boxer for a long time. I'm not claiming to be some tough guy, but I'm gonna let you know, craziness does not give you the ability to fight. That is a misconception.
Yes,
angry and all that. He did not turn into that. You turn into usually somebody that loses a fight even worse.
Right.
But yeah, you don't just get all that skill from like, well, he was real mad. I'm like, yeah, well, you make a guy that can't fight real mad. He's just a guy that's gonna go and be real mad and still continue not to be able to fight.
You have to control your emotions. If you're in a fight, you have to control your emotions. Getting enraged
it doesn't give you the ability. Anger doesn't bless you with the ability of skill.
I did find it all interesting that in both of the torture scenes, we have Roland doing the physical work and Wayne doing the questioning when Wayne is the bigger guy and the scarier guy to the targets.
Yeah, it is.
Right. It was interesting, and they talked a little bit in the show there about like, okay, does Roland have a little bit of a little man thing going? He's a little guy. They don't really make much of it, but like the biker mocks him, right, for being small. And so I'm wondering if there was some element of that. It's like Roland's going to not quite have the skill that he should have, but he's going to roll a little bit more swagger than he would if he was, 6 inches taller or 100 pounds heavier or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I think they underplayed that. It's like I never got the sense that Roland was an easily enraged guy.
No, yeah,
right, or his buttons are easily pushed, or you could, do it. But then they hinted that a little bit in the physical scenes, and it's like, oh, like you say, it's out of care. It's like Dolores. It's like, oh, all of a sudden Dolores is this complete fanatic who's not even thinking through what she's doing. Why? Well, because we need Bernard's story to play out a certain way. Oh, okay. Yeah, and I feel like they just every now and again they would just have Roland roll the way that Roland needed to roll in order for Wayne's story.
Be the character we need you to be right now.
Be the character we need you to be right now for Wayne.
But we still want this, like Dolores, that which is irreplaceable. That which is replaceable is not real. And then literally
which doesn't make any sense.
Replaces herself. Yeah. Charlotte's like she literally becomes.
She replaces herself, so she's.
Yeah, I'm like, not real.
She's not real.
I love too. This has all the knowledge, and she's like, I didn't read them all. I'm like, you didn't read them all? Excuse me? Like she's like, but I think I'm like, but can you take a few more minutes? Like it's just there's a lot.
You read them all. You would think that somebody would have put these clues together reading Amelia's book, because it's apparently a classic. It's apparently like a Robert Graysmith level famous Zodiac book that everyone's read who cares about this kind of thing. And she's got like 5 or 6 things in there that put the whole case together for a guy with dementia who was able to do it.
Yeah, you made a funny joke on one of the pages. You made a funny joke, but it was funny. Yeah. The whole, what was it? Man, I really wish I could solve this case. Didn't your wife write a book about it?
Write a whole book about it.
I loved it because I'm not gonna. I won't do it service. But the whole idea is like,
oh man, if only we had some clues. It's like, isn't there a whole big book?
You're so busy trying to solve the case, like that you can't solve the case.
Yeah. Well, right. The busy solving the case. So I'll do just 2 little quick things here. Is one, we did do a deep dive on Zodiac, and this is a book that was written in the same period of time, about 10 years earlier than Amelia's book, right? And one of the things that happened with that book was this was before, I think one of the things they didn't play with well enough in this season is before the information age, it was very difficult for the police to coordinate. Ted Bundy left a ridiculous series of clues as to who he was, but it took them forever to find him.
Yeah,
because there's no data processing. You had to have people sitting manually looking over all these license plates and things like that, right?
Yeah, he just went a state over, didn't he?
So what? Yeah. So or he went from Oregon to Florida to a couple.
But before that, he went to just one state over. Didn't he go to Utah?
Yeah, Utah, a couple states over. But the point is, it's like he was a very distinctive guy. He had a very distinctive car. He had the same MO. He used his real name.
Yeah.
Who got away. I mean, come on. So one of the things that law enforcement really appreciated out of Robert Graysmith's book is that he was one of the few people who put all of the raw facts together in one place. They would actually use that as the casework.
Oh.
As the casebook going forward. I mean, people who are doing later investigation, like in the late, would be like, oh, Graysmith's book has got all of the clues laid out. This is great. I don't have to go digging through all these boxes.
Yeah, because they're doing the data collection.
Yeah. So I think I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of like Amelia really put together that she's telling the story here and you're trying to get a story out of this. So maybe talk to the person who constructs a narrative.
Oh, I like that because that's like kind of like a meta, like are paying homage to, like how the development of that data collection and sharing.
Right. And this was in the 80s when she'd be doing it. This is when this science was being
relevant. Yeah.
Right. It's like now any Netflix, any Elisa can come forward and she can, with Google, she can put together a story, but not in 1980, that was harder to do. And the other thing is something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to touch on before we go was like we prefer a conspiracy theory to no theory at all, right? Mm-hmm. We want a monster and an answer so that we almost prefer there to be a global pedophile ring, even though that would be incredibly horrific, because then we can fight it.
Yep.
And we can name it, and we can point it out, and we can reveal it, and we can connect it, and we can own it, and we can control it. And we did a deep dive on JFK, and that was one of the themes I found with that is that a big part of the reason that we don't want to accept that Oswald did it is because that's a terrible story. He's just some loser. We want it to be the Russians and the CIA and the Cubans.
He's not good enough to kill our president.
He's not good enough to kill a president. We need the president to have been killed by a vast conspiracy.
I like my killers to be a little bit cooler.
Exactly. I prefer killers who are a little cooler. And these are the same guys who 10 years later couldn't break into a hotel room without getting caught.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so I think that's it feels like that's part of what Nick is trying to say, is that these conspiracies are so tempting because you want there to be this monster that you can.
Absolutely. Because then we can slay the monster and we're the good people.
As opposed to the monster being Hoyt and June, who are less than monstrous, but do something. They do something monstrous, but they are not themselves inherently monstrous.
Yeah, and we just go. We go on.
And you don't give us any complexity. You give us June as he's a stereotypical black character in a lot of ways, I felt.
Yeah.
And Hoyt felt like he could go into a stereotypical white direction if they gave him more screen time. And it's like, okay, it's not satisfying that these guys are our monsters. We want it to be the Cubans and the
yeah, it's, there's always one-dimensional characters that service the dimension, like building the other layers to the other characters. But those characters were not, as you brought up rightfully earlier, not them. Because they had too much skin in the game. Those are like your B, far B, characters. But I guess one thing I mentioned on the pre-show that in closing here before I'll go back to you for final thoughts is, I did like how they really captured throughout the series the kind of the theme of like what happens after you get back from war, and there was no imagery. Like except for the
final shot,
but in the ghosts, you know what I mean, like in the background, so you saw some Viet Cong, but there wasn't heavy. Like a lesser writer, in my opinion, would our director would invoke that, you know what I mean.
They have him walking into the jungle at the end.
That's what I said that's on the pre-show for the finale, and then they did have it, which I thought was like a nice end cap because really it did embrace it, so it was right to inject it there. And it was also he's always tracking, but now because of that dementia, he's tracking in his own head.
Right.
It's all in his own head now. Like he is literally, like that's him just going back to himself, and that's him internally. I'm sure that it's just not my opinion, but I'm not waxing poetic here, but it's a fairly simple interpretation that he is now going back to his own head. And he's, tracking those memories.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. One of our listeners wrote in from Sweden about, long story short, there's a very strong connection between PTSD when you're young and dementia when you're old. That some idea that PTSD can metastasize into dementia.
Because of dissonance, probably. I mean, you need to...
and it's a stress on the brain, right? So the more under stress the brain is, the sooner, the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long, right? I guess is the idea. So, and I do think that if we go back and look at this season, and now that we've taken a breath and, and we revisit it, that if you watch it with the theory that Wayne is suffering from PTSD the whole time, that there's something to that. That he's making some foolish choices and he's shutting himself off in some ways and getting jammed up in this case because of his experience in the jungle and because of maybe the kind of guy he is, plus the experience in the jungle.
Yeah, he's on edge the whole time, and
he's an edgy guy.
And what do you have to do in order to get through your day to day? Like what Woodward says to him something about like how do you do it? And so forth. He goes, I don't think about it. So you're suppressing. So it's like you bring your brain to that natural regime of suppressing information, but it's benefiting you because it allows you to operate until it gets to the point where your brain starts saying this is what he wants or she wants. Right.
Yeah, I think if you go through and you clock every point in the show where Wayne evades or hides or says he won't talk about something, and sometimes it's practical. It's like, I committed a murder and the chicken man knows, and so I'm not going to tell my wife about that. And sometimes it's just like, I don't think about those times, whatever. I think this is definitely a meditation of PTSD. And especially, again, tying back to the sort of the view of crime in the 80s, where we really thought like short-term PTSD could cause you to completely dissociate, develop 500 personalities, become a devil worshiper, sacrifice children, and leave no physical evidence. This was like a standard, like law enforcement thought that was a plausible pathology for crime.
Jesus.
Right? Yeah, if you look at the Satanic Panic stuff, oh my God, it was ridiculous. So you were born in 85. I was born in 70. Around the time you were born, a combination of like televangelists and daytime talk show people talking about abuse. We had kind of the left and the right both had a version of this idea that people like Julie essentially existed in mass numbers and would grow up to be these horrible abusers and not even know it. Right. Yeah. And so I think that's the context. That's the social context of the time. If you watch Wayne throughout it, the show never gets that lurid. It never goes down that far down that rabbit hole. But I think Wayne is a soft expression of that idea that he's basically dissociating at many times in this story from his own life. And the case just tweaks that.
Yeah, and he has to in order to operate, and to the point of it just overcomes.
And that's why it would make sense that he would not talk to Roland for 25 years, even though they live in the same small town. And I like the way that kind of projected onto Becca. It's like Becca, I think, is just a combination of her mom and her dad. She's kind of avoidant of her dad's dimension. She's run off to California like her mom.
She's gonna go.
So there might be some nature to it as well. It might just be part of the Hayes genome, is that you're kind of avoidant, and then if you have an incredibly stressful job like hunting people in Vietnam, that it's going to be very suppressive of your memories.
Yeah, I mean, Becca speaks to that when they're in the car in the penultimate episode. She says that, when he says he doesn't want her to go, she's like, oh, you'll be happy once you're lifting something heavy. That goes back to him putting himself into his work. He's like, you know me so well. So it's like careerism is always like a part of the show, and the themes. I like Pizzolatto. I think you don't bite the hand that feeds you. We talked about this a little bit. Yeah. Be a little bit more careful. Don't be on there. If you feel like you have to be on social media, curbing expectations. And also, it's not quite at the point of, I'm hoping for a good Westworld season 3, people, but like going on their lecture circuit, talking about how great it was and all this. First off, it wasn't season 2. Yeah. Second off, if you're explaining everything on this, like I'm seeing all these, big, college, speeches they're making. I'm like, you're explaining how good it was and you're trying to explain it out. I'm like, maybe that's a good idea that you might need to go back and make sure that your writing is really important.
Literally, it's show, don't tell. I shouldn't have to.
Yeah.
I should be able to get this analysis of somebody who's just watched your stuff.
Yeah. Now, what you really saw, what I was trying to do was this. Like, oh my God, that's so smart. I'm like, what? The idea that they didn't achieve what they were trying to? Because that's exactly what they're saying.
Here. And again, I'm not a Harper and Westworld, never like that, but it's like, let's make the security forces just dumber than dirt, because that's the only way any of this is going to work.
Yeah, when you have an overall theme of we're the adversary. And it's not winning unless you're beating, somebody. It's like, oh man, they just keep dropping in to die. They're always like, I'm the best. And then they're dead in a day. And then another one comes in, they're like, I'm the best. I'm like, man, who are they defeating?
Some final thoughts though. I feel like, and I felt like I had this level of disappointment in season 1's finale as well. It was a little too rote in its own way. I thought it was more action packed or whatever. I wasn't so surprised that this one was. I thought this was a very good season. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the acting. I was very surprised by Stephen Dorff. I expect Mahershala Ali to give a great performance. I've seen him around for a couple of years, but I never really gave much credit to Stephen Dorff.
This hopefully will have a resurgence.
They're calling it the Dorfissance.
Are they?
Detective
I like that.
Yeah, so I really enjoyed that. I did like the human relationships in this series much more than season 2. More than season 1, and this was a return to form, and I think that Nick can grow here a little bit.
Yeah,
and I think you really put your finger on it. It's like the degree to which you have to find yourself on Instagram managing expectations is the degree to which you're not telling your story the way you need to tell it.
Yeah.
But I do respect the story he's trying to tell. I don't need this to become an extended universe.
Yeah, I mean, how much? Are you still there? Did I lose you? Check.
You still have me?
Oh, now I got you back.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, just a little bit. So I don't know how much you lost there, but basically, I thought it was a return to form. I really like it. I am picking up Nick's theme, which is that the stories are about the humans and they're much more simple, and these conspiratorial details can be distractions that can hurt these characters as well as you. I wanted to elucidate that theme a little bit better in season 4. If he's gonna stick with that idea, let's do it in a way that's a little more interesting and engaging. It doesn't make us feel like schmucks for paying attention to the story.
Yeah, you got to let him down a little bit easier, because even somebody like me that had pretty much these exact expectations, watched this series, in full, and then watched this finale and said, I don't feel good about this. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't hate it, but I didn't feel it. So, like, you got to worry, because I in no way thought I pretty much on the ball said that this was what was going to happen. The only difference,
pretty much this, we were there too.
Yeah, like 1 or 2. Yeah, I mean, I'm not claiming
a few degrees of,
but I'm just trying to set the precedent that I did not expect really anything different, and I still felt like off about it. So, I didn't hate it again. So yeah, I think it's right, because it is something that is. We have to keep in mind that this style of writing lends itself to having a very, very difficult closing, bookending, sticking that landing. That is not going to be easy, because it really does depend on you going all these different routes and cultivating that whole suspicion, conspiracy, and all that, because that is beneficial. It adds to the social commentary. It gives you the better picture of the, it's hard to convey human condition. The human condition is like, oh, it's a story about the human condition. It's like, that's not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
It's quite the task. So you got to give him credit, but at the same time, you can't just give us like that. It feels like that was like his board, like he storyboarded it, and like that's what happened, and then he just took the Post-it and said, "Go ahead." There's a script. Like you needed to play that out. That was the idea. That was the synopsis. For what you needed to do. Like you need to give us that like parsed out and in a creative way.
I think so. I think there's a difference between saying that the outcome of the case is not the important question, and saying that the outcome of the case is not something that I'm interested in or that I'm going to pay too much attention to. And I think the last comparison I'll make is that people sometimes compare this to Twin Peaks, especially season 2. He did a lot more very overt references to David Lynch and that kind of thing. So, but the sort of gritty crime in a small town, strange detective, possible supernatural elements or whatever. And I think he fell into one of the traps that Lynch fell into in that series as well, which is that Lynch never really wanted to reveal who killed Laura Palmer. It wasn't an interesting question to him. Her death was just a way of getting you into this community and getting you into this quirky-ass story that he wanted to tell, which, by the way, plays out in The Return. And if you want Yellow King craziness, go just watch Twin Peaks The Return. It pays off as crazy as you want, right? And he ran into trouble. And he's David Lynch, so he gets to do what he's going to do, but he ran into trouble with the networks over that, where it's like, you cannot give us dead girl mystery and then never solve it. It's like, wait, but people need to learn that that's not important. It's like, David, it is important, so stop, you made it important in season 1. And I think that Nick has a little bit of that Lynchian element of like, I hooked you in with this part of the story, but no, it's really, I really want you to pay attention to these characters. And it's like, no, you really have to make the resolution of the plot interesting. It doesn't have to be the important thing. You can make it interesting that it's not the important thing, and we find that out. But you have to care about it enough not to just make it a Mr. June dump.
Yeah, you have to have a reveal that is
that's pleasing in some way.
That's on par with the way in which you have depicted it. So so we're at least left with, oh my God, that was amazing. What a fool I was to think that this was the most important thing. But look how it really connects to this. Make me feel like I get some reward for investing in this part of the story, since you're putting so much effort into it in 7 out of 8 of the episodes. Yeah, even a slight
one episode you're saying, oh, this is not really important.
Yeah, even a slight pacing adjustment wouldn't be like, I wouldn't say that's the remedy for it, but it would have helped. Like you could have just parsed it out a little bit. I would have recommended starting by like showing the kids, just like from what exactly happened out, on their bikes. That would have been a good thematic way to do it. It mirrors the pilot. It goes along with conventional writing structure. So narrative structure. I'm sorry. I thought that would have worked for me. thematically. It's just, I think we're in agreement. We're not going to try to rewrite it here. We'll do a whole fan fiction for you. But it could have been a little bit more imaginative.
Yeah, and I guess I really want to emphasize, I'm respecting what I think Nick is trying to say about true fiction and detective fiction and true crime and that kind of thing. And I think that he's very close to being able to do it just right. But the disappointment he's creating in half the fan base is an indication that he's not quite delivering that message.
Yeah, and the outrage culture's there. We got to factor it in. People are overanalyzing. People just want things to be different. People sometimes don't know what's right for them, but I agree. It's don't say things don't matter by making them don't matter.
Right, exactly.
Hey, guess why this doesn't, but you made it matters to your story, because the narrative that you've taken on this story, it matters to its characters, so we have to have it matter still.
Yeah, these characters are following this up. They want answers, so we want the answers. Even on the show, they said, "Do you feel any closure?" Nope, not really. It's like, okay, well,
yeah. It was too. Yeah, it was almost like like Deadpooled it. Like, I mean,
right.
Yeah, you went too meta on it. At the end, that's it.
Fourth wall. They should have broke the fourth wall and just start talking to us.
They almost did.
Yeah,
it's having a one of those old school movies like Varsity Blues about like winning the big game, and then like it's not about the game. I'm pretty sure it's about the game.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, no, I love your guys' cast. I love it. You're able to have a group of people, which I know is not easy. And have intelligent conversation.
We call it the Zoo Crew.
Free form. That's not you guys regurgitating what happened. But it's structured and it's entertaining. And I think
we follow the recap format.
Podcasts. Podcasts are not everybody thinks I'll just have a podcast. Everybody cares what I think. It's hard to achieve what I think you guys have achieved.
Thank you.
And I really am happy that I found you guys, and in these groups too.
Come hang out with the groups, and hopefully Westworld season 4 or 3 rather will be a little more fun. And we really enjoy your stuff as well. Your contribution to our groups is always appreciated.
Yeah, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to Westworld season. Yeah, I'm going to go season 4. Let's curb our expectations.
Yeah, let's just skip over season 3.
They gradually get better, so you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put all Jason's links in the information below. Make sure to subscribe if you guys have not already.
Please.
And check out the cast. And I'm excited actually to listen to your guys. Did you guys just release it?
We recorded last night, and I'll be releasing tonight.
Awesome. It'll be out with us. So thank you guys so much, and thank you, Jason.